Sheep Christian podcast. And today I have author Wesley Farnsworth. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. It's good to be with you.
Thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely.
Today is a beautiful topic. This is something that I'm happy to have reached out to you about and for you to be here today because, as simple as this concept is, I think how the way your book is written is a great way for people to be able um, to have a plan about their purpose, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, the book is The Blueprint of Becoming a Practical Guide to Faith. And this is a great book, in my opinion. Oh my goodness. I'm just messing around, people. I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. So,
Uh,
this is a great book as far as to have a blueprint as far as your purpose. Um, what what prompted you to decide to write this book?
yeah. So actually, the full name of the book is actually Blueprint of Becoming a Practical Guide to Faith, Failure, and Finding Your Way Forward. I just want to
Mm,
make sure I can get all that in there.
yeah.
But as far as kind of what prompted it, back in 2019, I was attending a meeting for Celebrate Recovery, which we can talk about later if you want to. But during that, I heard a testimony, and somebody said something, and to this day, I can't remember exactly what they said, but it prompted something in my heart and in my mind, and just kind of it put this idea of: Have you ever seen the movie The Knight's Tale with Owen Wilson?
No, not in its
Okay.
entirety. I do know
Well,
what you're referring to.
yeah, so there's a scene in the movie, and it's in a lot of different medieval movies. There's similar scenes, but in the scene, the little boy's sitting on the parade route, and this knight comes walking down in his horse and shiny everything, and he's like, "Dad, I want to be like him one day." And the dad's like, "Yeah, you could do that." And then, without missing a beat, there's a guy in the crowd, and he goes, "You can't do that. You're just a peasant boy. You can't change your stars." um, and that just really, that scene, when that, whatever that person said in their testimony, that scene just really popped into my mind. um, and I couldn't shake it. And so we went in, and was talking to some more people that night, and the more I talked about it, the more it just kind of like burrowed itself down into my soul, into my heart.
Mm,
um, and the biblical part of that just really started taking root in, how so many of us feel like, we've done something, or we come from a certain background, or somebody has said whatever it is about us, and because of that, we're defined. We
mm,
can't be whatever it is that we want to be, because we're letting that whatever hold us back. And so, uh, the more I just continue to sit on that and meditate on it, the more the Spirit just kind of tapped me on the shoulder over and over and over again, to the point where I started writing it. The first couple of chapters of the book are my personal testimony, where I talk about what I've gone through and the addictions I've faced and stuff like that. But then, as I just continued writing, it's taken me 6 years to write it. I said I started back in 2019. And I would write for a little bit, and then life would get busy, and I would kind of put it on the back shelf. And eventually, I would feel that tug again, like, hey, this still has to be done. And so it kind of went back and forth like that over the last 6 years, until earlier this year, in April, when I found myself unemployed. And
mm.
God was like, hey, guess what you have time to do now? And so, I followed the prompting and finished the book, and now here we are.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So you already preluded to some things that we're going to talk about. Because reading your book, I had thoughts in my mind, and which I do recommend people reading because it is a um, it is a beautifully put together book in the sense of you talk about your experience and then you use that experience to apply to something that's biblical, and then you lay out ways for us, for others to be able to um, on paper to be able to learn and walk that path
Hmm.
and be able to practically put it down. Because when it comes to plans and purposes and what God wants us to do, it all just swims. It almost feels like an ocean. Sometimes you just don't know if you're up or down, especially how the waves move. But I find it beautiful of the idea of changing your stars and for you to be able to make that practical because it does feel that way in a sense that when you're born, you don't get to choose your parents, you don't get to choose your environment, you don't get to choose your circumstances. So everything just feels set from the very beginning.
Hmm.
And God does a great job consistently to come to us and say, yeah, we're about to change some things and I'm going to fine.
Uh,
So, I mean, that's my slang way of saying it. Um, so the idea of changing your stars I find interesting, and it it's interesting because little with the story that you used about the boy in the movie, it's fascinating to me how dad says a trusted parent, a trusted an adult, yeah, you can do what you put your mind to it. You can be who you desire to be. But a stranger just puts an end to it real quick. And I
mhm.
find that scene that you point out very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I'm a parent, and I think I know you mentioned you are too. And as parents, we want nothing more for our kids than to feel like they can succeed, right?
Yep.
And so if they say, I want to do this, we're going to say, go for it. We
Right.
want you to have everything and then some. Um, but the stranger walking down the road doesn't look at it the same way.
Right.
They look
Right.
at you through a different lens. And so to me, that's just an illustration of the people that we have to be careful of the people that we let within our circles and the people that we have let have influence over our lives. You know, we can have people in our lives. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, "Well, I don't know that I want to give up having so and so in my life." And I said,
Mm,
"Well, that's okay. You don't to make a change in your life, you don't necessarily have to remove people from your life,
mm,
but you do have to remove their influence that they
mm,
have on your life. So if you have somebody that if you want to be a doctor, let's just say you want to be a doctor, and you have everybody else saying, yeah, go for it. But then you have this one person that's saying, no, you can't do that. You're not smart enough, or you're this, or you're that. Well, then you can continue hanging out with that person. I wouldn't recommend it because they're just speaking negativity in your life. But if you so
yes.
choose to do that, you can still do that. Just limit the interactions that you have with them, and then
Mm,
make sure that when they speak into your life, you're not letting that take root and take hold. And instead, you're kind of letting it go in one ear and out the other,
yeah.
so that it's not stopping you from becoming the person that God's calling you to be.
Mm, that's a good example. That reminds me of Jesus and his disciples, in the sense of they were experts in their own way, in their own fields. But when it came to the walk, he allowed input, but he didn't have that input influence his actions.
Yeah, yep. And really, I mean, when you think about changing your stars, right? What we're
Mm,
really talking about is hope. Okay,
yes,
the hope that your past doesn't determine your future. We
yes.
all face moments that threaten us, or they threaten to stop us. Whether it be shame, fear, addiction, rejection, whatever it might be. But God's plan is never limited by where we've been, right?
Yeah.
And like in my own life, there's been years where I thought I'd ruined my chance to have a better story. Uh, but God, He specializes in rewriting stories, and He takes those things that we've done and He uses them for His glory. He turns our mess into a message, as a lot of people like to say. And so when we align our lives with the truth that He speaks over us, and we take those small faithful steps forward, He can completely reorient and change
Mm.
the trajectory of our lives, and really help us change those stars.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like having that digest. Your story is beautiful in many ways, as far as your beginning, and your struggles and the end. And what I find fascinating is that you already grew up in the church. So
Mhm.
not as if you weren't aware of um, of what God has asked us to do. And there's one area that I find interesting is that you got bored. I felt like you got bored to a certain point because in your book you write about you were just like, yeah, no, I apologize. You were in a class, you left the class, and you sat outside.
Vacation
And
Bible School.
yeah, and had a conversation with somebody.
Yep. Yeah, it was a vacation Bible school class. And like you said, I grew up in the church. My dad was a full time evangelist. And so in my head, my little child's brain, I knew everything that there was to know about God, right?
Yeah.
And so, because that's how I grew up, I've grown up in it and around it and surrounded by it. And so we went to vacation Bible school at my aunt's church one year. And uh, I couldn't tell you what they were teaching or anything, but I just remember getting bored and going to sit in the hallway. And one of the teachers came out and said, "Why are you sitting out here?" And I looked at her and I said, "Because I'm bored. I already know there is everything there is to know about God."
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you what her response was. I couldn't tell you anything else about that day or really that entire experience in BBS that year, but I remember that specific memory from it, and it just is something that I always kind of, when I look back on it, I just kind of start chuckling because I want to go how naive I was at that point in time.
But it's interesting because this is going to be leading into other things that we're going to be talking about. It's interesting because when you think about it on a surface level, when you read what others went through on a surface level, it's like that's it. Moses was rich. He left after he murdered somebody. He came back and freed God's people. Like, boom, that's it. Like there's a lot of surface level, but there's something about the heart when it's kind of like, or different perspectives and point of views when you end up standing on the other side and you just learn the many facets of what God is trying to show us.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one thing I love about God and I love about how he uses people is because he uses, you mentioned Moses, but I
Yeah.
also, as you were talking about him, Paul came to mind. You know,
Yeah.
Paul was Saul, and he persecuted Christians,
Yes.
and he killed Christians, and all of a sudden one day he went from Saul to Paul, and now instead of killing, he was rejoicing with and saving and working for God and doing all of these things. And God uses our past and he uses that for his glory. Paul, I think, was so successful because he was able to take his experiences as Saul and reach out to people that previously would have been closed off to anything that he or one of the other disciples or followers of Jesus said. But
Mm.
he was able to use his experiences and say, "Hey, I was you just yesterday, just a week ago. You saw me. I was you. I was murdering these guys, right? I was persecuting these guys. But now I'm here to tell you a different story."
Yeah.
And that's what he does with us is he takes us and he says, "Hey, I don't care where you've been or what you've done or what you've gone through.
Yeah.
I can use you and I can use your story to further my kingdom, but you have to be willing to let me."
Yes. Yes. And your story is interesting in a way because I was similar in a way as far as wanting to be accepted by anybody and everybody.
Hmm.
That desire to be accepted. to the point where in the beginning you think it's a good thing, you know, because you're like, it's not like everybody loves me type thing. It's almost for me, it was almost as if I can be able to be in every situation at all, you know, at any time and at all times. But for you, it was different.
Yeah, when you think about the fear of rejection, right? It is such a powerful feeling.
Yeah.
And as humans, we don't want to feel that rejection in any way, shape, or form. And so uh, when you start to let that fear run your life, you start to
Mm,
become codependent on other people. You begin to shift how you think, what you say, what you do to meet the appearance of
mm,
what you think this other person wants from you. And you get to be so good at that. I often refer to myself, and I refer to myself in the book as the master chameleon,
mhm,
because
mhm,
I could go into any situation, any environment, and blend in pretty well because I just became
mhm,
that good at it. Part of it was because, growing up as a pastor's kid and even as a husband and a church leader, I thought being accepted meant being perfect. I thought that I had to be accepted and had to be um, approved of in order
mhm,
to reflect positively on my wife at the time, my pastor, the church I attended, where I worked, but more importantly, to be reflected on Jesus. And so I felt like if I said something that somebody didn't disagree with, or that's I'm sorry, somebody didn't agree with, even if I wasn't wrong, if they disagreed with me, then that was a fear of rejection, and that would cause them to look negatively on me, which then would cause them to look negatively on the people I was associated with, God, if they weren't Christians, all of that type of thing. So that fear and shame made me uh, really kind of overtook my life in a lot of ways, and because of
mhm,
that, I found myself shifting who I was so often that I started to really lose myself. I started, I talk about how I reached a breaking point in the book, where I realized that God didn't want a polished version of me. He wanted the real me. He wanted the broken, the honest, the person that was willing to grow. And when I stopped hiding and I started healing, then I began to remember who I really was. And that's when my healing and my journey to becoming my blueprint of becoming, that's when that really started to take root in my life, because I started to become not who others expected me to be,
mhm,
but who God created me to be. And
mhm.
so that's kind of how things have taken root and shape over the years. Is I I let go of that fear of rejection as much as I could. I'm still human. I still have it every now and then, um, but I don't let it run my life like I once did.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's powerful. You know, it's really connecting because when we talk about, you know, the changing of your stars and we're talking about, you know, the being influenced with your fear of rejection, you were influenced in ways that were unhealthy for you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I was influenced by a lot of people. I worked in public places, and a lot of the people I worked with were not Christian, and so
Mhm.
they would say things and do things, and uh, coming from a Christian household, some of the things that they said and did, I didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
And so they led to me doing things that I probably shouldn't have done. When I think about the addiction, I had a 20-year addiction to pornography that was the result of one of those things. I had a friend that said something, and I had no idea what that term was that he said, and I couldn't tell you what the term was today. But I remember him saying something that I didn't know what it was. And so I went home that night and I did an internet search because I wanted to know what this term was. Because when he said it, he and all of the other people we were with started laughing and joking about it. And so I thought it was something funny. And so I went home and searched for it. so that next time it happened, I wasn't going to be caught off guard. I would be able to participate in a knowledgeable way and be accepted, right? I wouldn't be rejected. I would be accepted. There's that codependent part of it again. And that night, the doors to the addiction kind of swung open, and I was introduced to things that I never should have been introduced to. And it took me a long time to surgically remove it from my life.
Yeah. When I read that in your book, I completely understood because coming from a Christian home myself, there were things that my parents didn't allow for us to watch or didn't allow for us to consume as far as the media when it came to music and television. And so there were times when I disobeyed and went to a friend's house and watched something that I wasn't supposed to watch. And
Yep.
so I remember one time. It was like around Halloween, and it was a sleepover, and I remember it was I Know What You Did Last Summer, and which is rated R. It was rated R, and I wasn't allowed to watch rated R. But I'm with a group of friends, so who's for me to say I can't watch this in front of a group of people, right?
Yep.
So it was considered like horror, and so um we watched it, and I remember I confessed it to my mom. First of all, I thought it was stupid at the time because everybody was like and I was like, why are they doing that? That's so stupid. But anyways, I remember I confessed it to my mom, and my mom was like, I hope you sleep well at night, which I did. But that is an example. When I read what you did, I completely understood because even because I was similar in that way too, because you want to be accepted.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think of it as like that shiny red button, you know,
yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
like, don't push that. You can push any other button, but don't push that red button. Right. And so when you tell a kid, hey, here's this red button, or even worse,
yes,
you say here's this great big panel of buttons, but
yes,
you don't tell them that if they move that curtain off to the right, there's another big red button, right? And then they find that red button on their own. What are they going to do? They're going to
yeah,
want to push that red button and see what that red
yes,
button does.
exactly.
And so when you have kids and you don't tell them about things, and you don't introduce them or let them um, become knowledgeable about things of the world. I mean, hey, I'm not big into profanity, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
profanity is a way of the world. It's everywhere.
yes,
And
yes,
so I think people are like, hey, I don't let my kids watch things with profanity at home.
yes,
And well, that's fine and that's okay. And to a sense, it even makes, or to a degree, it even makes sense.
right.
What you're really doing is you're sheltering them. And so when they get older and they are away from home and they're at their friend's house,
Yes,
or they
yes,
go off to college, or they become adults on their own, and now they have this shiny red button that they found because mom
yeah,
and dad said I could never touch that button or
right.
let alone look at it. What are they going to want to do?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
going to want to see that button does.
yes. Oh my gosh, that reminds me. I remember when you use the word profanity, it reminds me of a story of my daughter. And on the swings, I'll never forget it. And they're just testing the water. And they were like, which ditch? Like they were like, how are you gonna react, mom? And I remember when they did that, I was like, listen, if you're going to use those words, you need to use those words correctly, and you're not using those words correctly.
Exactly.
So, these are the reasons why these words should not be used in this manner. But I will never forget that. But but yes, but as parents, and you are correct in the sense that, and it's a balancing act because um when you shelter too much as you said, it's a shiny red button, and it can be too much when they do become exposed. But as parents in Christ, it's important for us to be able to guide them in the
Right.
right direction.
I mean, I think back to my addiction, I grew up in the churches I attended, the topics of things like pornography was never talked about ever. Like I can think of probably
Mm-hmm.
one time in all of my years growing up that I remember it being talked about in a youth group setting. And it surely wasn't talked about at home. And
Right.
so now I'm not saying that, hey, parents, you need to go out and let your kids watch porn and introduce them to it so that they're not addicted to it later in life. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. Don't get me wrong. But there is a way that you can say, hey, this is what this is.
Yeah.
These feelings and these curiosities are normal, right? As men,
Right.
we're supposed to be attracted to women, and women, you're supposed to be attracted to men. The
Yeah.
curiosities are normal, and it's okay to talk about them as long as you're doing it in a healthy way and a safe
Right.
way with mom or dad or pastor or somebody like that. And you're expressing and you're talking about them in a curiosity and a healthy way.
Right. Right.
Um, but the kids need to know and teens need to know that, hey, this is okay to talk about in a healthy, safe manner. Don't go talk about it with friends on the side of the road, all that, because neither one of you know what you're talking about.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but if you can do it in a healthy way and the kids know that they can do it without fear of being rejected or
Yes.
fear of being shamed or
Yeah.
being looked down on for having these feelings or these thoughts, then I honestly think the systemic problem of addictions to things like pornography will go away, because that shiny red button effect, that hidden the hidden power, the draw that it has, will lose its
Mhm.
power, its draw, because now these things that were in the shadows are being brought into the light. And when things are in the light, they can't sustain in the darkness.
Yes. Facts. It's interesting because as a church, I don't think, as a whole, we really don't know how to have these conversations, because I think part of it is we don't even know how we feel about things ourselves. We know, for example, profanity, pornography, those things are bad. You know, that's clear. We know things are bad, but we just don't know our feelings to be able to articulate how it makes other people feel and how to handle it.
Well, and I think part of it too is we know that they're bad, but for a lot of us, we don't know why they're bad, right? We
Ooh,
only we only know they're bad because that's what we were told being brought up.
yes,
And so in order for us to say, yeah, those are bad,
yes,
we need to know why they're bad and have an understanding of our own in order for us to be able to really let it take root and be a part of our lives. Otherwise, we're just regurgitating what somebody else said,
yes.
and it really means nothing to us.
Facts, facts. There's no better way I can say that. So, with your story of coming out of your addiction is really powerful to me, because it's something that we all go through, no matter how small or extreme it is. And it is the physically saying that I have a problem and I can no longer handle this.
Mm-hmm.
I find your story quite fascinating in that way. You finally go back to church. You find a group to be with. What spirit environment? I don't know how to describe it. What allowed you to be able to say now is the time, because you had a lot of opportunity, but you were too scared to even take that chance.
Yeah, I never stopped going to church. I've gone to church my entire life. And so that's one of the things that I think is honestly, one of the things that makes my story so unique and powerful, and I'm not even going to say unique because I know I'm not the only one, and I can say that
Yeah.
with 100% certainty. Um, but for a long time, I didn't seek help. I didn't get help because, well, it was for a couple of different reasons. Number one, for a while there, I was in the military and I had a security clearance, and I was afraid of, if I came forward and said, "Hey, I have this problem, this addiction," it might interfere with my security clearance in some way or my ability to serve. And I didn't want to chance that. And because I was military, I was moving around a lot, and I didn't have the ability to meet people and create um, friendships at a deep enough level that I knew that I could trust them with something so big in my life, right?
Mm.
And so it wasn't until I got out of the military and we moved to this place to Ohio, and we started going to this church, and I started serving there, and I actually became a ministry leader. I was running the church live stream, and I was just really, I was in a lot of ways, my faith was progressing and growing, but I still had this one thing holding me back,
Mm.
lingering there in the shadows. And that's when the church started a ministry called Celebrate Recovery. Now,
Mm.
give a little plug about for Celebrate Recovery real quick. The one thing I love about this ministry is it's not for addictions as most people think. When they hear recovery, they think of recovery meetings, they think of drugs and alcohol. First thing people think of. But when it comes to Celebrate Recovery, that's not the case. Really, 1 in 3 people that go to Celebrate Recovery are there for drugs or alcohol. Everyone
Mm.
else that's there is for things of life. Celebrate Recovery helps you with any kind of a hurt, any kind of a habit, any kind of a hang up. And so when people are like, well, can I go? I said, do you wake up in the morning and are you human? And if you can answer yes to those 2 things, then you can go to Celebrate Recovery and find something there for you because they help you overcome your hurts in life. Everybody's been
Mm.
hurt in some way, shape, or form in their life. And so CR was started at the church, and I was like, man, that sounds really cool. I should go check it out.
Mm.
And that had I kind of just let that linger for a few months. I was like, well, I really don't want to. It's not going to be for me. I know that I need to go, but it's not for me. And so finally one day I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And so I got there, and I kind of sat in the parking lot for a little bit, and the weight of it just kind of sat there with me. And I
Mm.
was like, man, if I go in there and I admit to this thing, what are people going to think of me? All of the lies, that the other part of the reason I never got help is because of the lies the enemy was telling me. You're not good enough to beat this. If you admit this, then they're going to look at you with such disgust, and you're never going to be allowed back in the church again. And you're unique. Nobody else has ever dealt with something like this. And all of these things that the enemy is telling you to keep you right where he wants you, right? And so I'm sitting in the car, and the lies of the enemy are just going through my head. And so eventually I was like, you know what? I need to go in. So I got up and I walked in, and I sat in the back row, and I said, I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to go through the meeting, and then I'm going to just get up and leave. And then I can say that I tried it and it's not for me.
Mm.
Well, obviously that didn't work out for me because we went through the meeting, and then after the meeting, I went through what they call Newcomers 101, which is for anybody that's new. You go and you just learn more about the ministry. And for whatever reason, that night I was the only new guy in the building, and so I sat with the ministry leader at the time, and he said, "So, what brings you in tonight?" And I said, "Codependency." Which codependency, as we talked about earlier, is just the fear of being of wanting to be approved of others. The fear of rejection, the fear of caring what other people think about you more than what you think, or more importantly, what God thinks of you. And I'd never even heard the term codependency until that night. But I heard it explained from the stage that night. And so when they asked what brought you in, I said codependency. And he said, okay, great. He's like, well, it's good to have you. And he started to move on, and he just stopped dead in his tracks. And he looked at me and he said, "Is there anything else?"
Mm.
Now, I can tell you from experience and with 100% certainty, he had no reason to ask that question because it's not in their leader's guide. But it was at that moment that I had sirens going off in my head. You know, have you ever seen the movie Inside Out?
Yes.
You know, all the little characters inside the head running crazy, the sirens going off. That was the inside of my head. What's going on? How did he know? Or what did he know? How did he know it? All these things are running through my head. And I just started bawling, absolutely bawling. And that's when I that's when I broke down and found myself admitting to this addiction that I'd been hiding for 20 years. And instead of hearing all of the things that the enemy told me I was going to hear, I heard, "Wes, you are a brave man. Thank you for admitting that to me." And instead of rejection, I found love. And instead of rejection, I found acceptance. And it was that night that the addiction broke, and my road to healing and sobriety from the addiction began.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, I'm digesting, giving that its moment, because that is a beautiful moment on both parts. Because for you to be able to say what you hold on for so long, but also for him to be able to obey. I'm guessing he probably had the Holy Spirit tell him,
Oh, there's no other way there is zero other way to explain that. That was clearly a prompting from God. God, I could just see God standing there. He's like, "He's not done yet. Ask him again."
Exactly. Because when we use Paul as an example, and I can't remember his name, and oh my gosh, because when Paul had the encounter with Jesus, he was blind for a couple of days, and so somebody came to him. God told him to go to him, knowing who he was and what he was doing, so he will be able to begin his journey with Christ. And so that is beautiful that you were able to begin your journey, not to begin your journey, but to begin a new chapter with Christ, I should say. I think that would be a better way of saying it. A new chapter with Christ. Yeah. So that's beautiful.
New chapter in my blueprint.
Yeah. Yeah. That's even better. Oh, goodness. So, your book offers tools to write out goals and ways to identify for us to work on.
Mm-hmm.
You were brave to move forward in your relationship with Christ. And so for those who are afraid to move forward physically, because that was a physical, for you to open up your mouth to say something is a physical act.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who are afraid to physically move, what advice would you give them?
I would say this: you don't have to move fast. You just have to move. Take those little steps, those baby steps, those steps of faith, and just move forward little by little. Don't worry about it's not a sprint, or it's not a marathon, right? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You're taking it one step at a time. You can't eat an elephant with one bite. You can't eat an apple with one bite. Addiction and overcoming your life's hurts and your habits and your hangups and the things that have happened to you, right? Those are not things that are going to change overnight. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on. They wake up one day and they say, "Okay, I'm going to become this, and I'm not going to let this worry me anymore or bother me anymore." And so they go, "Cool," and they go through the day, and then they something happens and it pops its head out, and they go, "Well, I can't do it." They throw up their hands and they go, "I'm just going to stick with what I know because it's what I know, and I at least know how to manage it," right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. Fear often tells us that we need to have everything figured out before we start. But faith says, take the next right step, and God will, trust God with the rest, right?
Yes.
Take the next right step and trust God with the rest. In the book, I give readers a lot of different things that they can do, through writing and other things. But one of the things I do is I give goals, right?
You do.
I give you things that you can do, not just for achievement's sake, but to begin to align your actions with God's purpose.
Mm.
Sometimes that means just taking small steps like writing a prayer or joining a group or asking somebody for help. But the key is obedience over perfection.
Mm.
Every small, consistent step that you take in the right direction will build momentum. And God meets us in that in that motion, and He honors it. But He doesn't like hesitation. We have to have the basically we have to go all in, right? We have to say, okay, God, I know what you want to do. I feel what you want to do. I sense your spirit moving, and I know this is an area of my life that I need to work on. So I'm going to begin taking those baby steps, those small steps forward. And with each step, I'm going to start to build momentum. And then that momentum is going to turn into a walk, into a sprint, into a full out run. And you're going to start seeing life change. And, another thing that I think keeps people from holding people back is they say, I alluded to this, I've been dealing with this for so long. I know what my life is like with it in it. I can't picture my life without whatever it is in it. Let's use cheeseburgers for an example.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loves cheeseburgers, unless you're a vegetarian, in which case I'm sorry for you listening to this. But everybody that likes meat likes a good cheeseburger. It's like a holy grail when you find one. You know what life is like. You know what life is like with cheeseburgers in it. And now for you to sit here as a meat lover and say, man, what would my life be without cheeseburgers in it? We can't picture that. And we don't want to picture that.
Yeah.
But if it gets to the point where it's bad enough that you have to eliminate cheeseburgers from your life, well, now you have to start taking those steps and be like, God, and just be honest with God. He already knows that, God, I love these cheeseburgers. I love whatever this thing is in my life. I'm used to it. It gives me comfort. It may not be healthy for me, but physically or spiritually, but it brings me comfort. I know what it's like. I'm scared of the dark, or I'm scared of what's on the other side of around that corner when I finally turn that corner and it's no longer in my life. I'm scared of it because it's now the unknown.
Right.
And we don't like the unknown.
No, we don't.
And so you have to let him give you that help, and just put your trust in him that what's waiting for you around that corner without whatever that is in your life is better than what you could ever imagine, and is definitely better. If God's telling you to remove it from your life, then I guarantee you whatever is waiting for you around that corner is better than what's in your life right now.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm digesting. That's well said. I find it funny that you use cheeseburgers as an example because it was over the weekend. It wasn't even a week ago. It was so funny because I wanted a burger, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Burger King and get a burger. And I was like, a Whopper, that's what I want. And so there was a Whopper and a Whopper Junior, and I was like, this is not healthy for me. So let me get the Junior. So I open it up, because the Junior in my area is like $3 and change. Okay, just the sandwich. The Whopper is like $7 and change. And I was like, I'm definitely gonna get the Junior. It's cheaper and it's smaller, and I don't need it. And when I opened that thing, I was like, it's so small. I was very disappointed how small it was. But then I was like, I'm not even supposed to be eating this to begin with.
But see, you took a baby step there, right?
I did.
You said, you know what? I really want a burger, and instead of getting that big Whopper, I'm going to do the Whopper Junior. I know I'm not going to be completely satisfied,
Right.
but it's going to wet those taste buds just enough that it'll remove the craving. And so you took a baby step. Now,
Yeah.
next time you can go, I don't need that Whopper, and not get it at all. But you took
Right.
you
Right.
took that baby step in the right
Right.
direction.
Yeah. Not even go to Burger King, period.
That's right. Just keep on driving.
I got food at home that I already bought. That's what's so sad. Like you go to the grocery store and buy food, and then you go and pick up some takeout. Oh goodness.
Yeah. But see,
Um,
and that's where things like accountability, having accountability people in your
yes.
life too. I
Yeah.
mentioned joining a group. You know, part of Celebrate Recovery is not necessarily there for a problem. It's because you need community, right?
Yes.
Everybody that goes there admits that they have something that they're dealing with, whether it be they want to remove cheeseburgers from their life, or they want to remove things like alcohol or drugs, or just the pain from somebody hurting them 15-20 years ago. Whatever it is, there's something that needs to be removed. And when you can put yourself in a community of people, whether it be one people or 100 people that all admit that we're broken, we're humans, we're broken, we're not perfect. It's okay to admit you're not perfect. It's okay to not be okay. Hear me when I say that. When you can admit that, and you surround yourself with people that you can be honest with and you can be vulnerable with, then now you have a support team in your life. So when you're like, hey, I really want this Whopper, right? You can call up your friends and be like, yo, remember I was telling you the other day about that I'm trying to eliminate cheeseburgers from my life? Man, I had this craving for a Whopper so bad. Like, and man, I should be getting money from Whopper right now, because people are going to be asking, they're going to be going to lining up at Burger King. But you can call up that person, that accountability person in your life, those people that you've surrounded yourself, be like, hey, remember I was telling you about this? I really want this right now. Can you talk to me? Can we just get together, or can you just talk to me until this craving passes? Or at least until I go past the drive-thru, so that I don't turn my car in there, and so that's where the power of community comes in. Anything that has to do with changing your life is not meant to be done alone. You can't do it alone. We're meant to be in community with other people. And when you try and do something by yourself, I'm not saying it's completely impossible, but it is definitely 100% harder than it is when you have community in your life and you have those people that you can rely on and depend on to be there for you and have your back when you need it.
Yes. Yes. Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thinking about that little boy who was bored during BBS, what would you what what do you think he was missing, and what would you say to him today?
And I was thinking about this earlier, actually, and I said, I'm like, what would I tell myself back then? And
Yeah.
what was different about my faith then compared to now? And I think one of the big things for me is, I would just say, you don't know everything, and
Mm,
soak up the knowledge from those around you, especially those that are older than you, and
mm,
really just ask questions and embrace the unknown.
mm.
Uh, when we're children, we have a level of understanding that is different than adults. We have a thirst for knowledge. We just don't want to get it from school, because then it's I have 4 kids. I can say that they don't want to get it from school. But
Valid.
you just got to have a thirst for knowledge and be like,
Mm,
hey. And so when I think about what was different from then to now, is growing up, I had faith, and I was saved, and I can say that with certainty. But the faith wasn't really my own. In a lot of ways, I was riding the faith
mm,
and piggybacking or riding the coattails of my parents' faith, right? Because they took me to church every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. If the church doors were open, I like to say, both of my parents served in ministry, so it was kind of a family business. So if the church doors were open, we were there. And so I didn't know a whole lot. I didn't know life outside of ministry. And so Um, as a result, the faith really didn't become my own until I was grown up and out of the house,
Mm,
and I started having to face things on my own. And I had to say, hey, no, you know what? You're going to get your butt out of bed and go to church on Sunday morning, or you're going to get your butt out of bed and go to that CR meeting, even though you don't want to, because that's what you need to do.
yes.
And I'm going to tell you right now, every time I have forced my butt to get out of bed and go to church or go to CR or go to anything else that's faith related, even though I didn't want to, that's when I got the most out of it, because then I was there and I was there with a purpose. And so my ears were open more than when I go just because I know it's where I'm supposed to be.
Yes.
And so you have to, as I kind of look back, I would say those are kind of the two things I would say. I would say number one, as a child, embrace the unknown, admit that you don't know everything. It's okay to admit that. You're probably not going to, because you're a kid and you think you know everything, and adults don't. Um, but just be okay admitting that, and ask and seek the knowledge of those around you. And then as you continue to grow, learn how to make the faith your own,
Yes.
and not stop riding the coattails or the pigtails or the whatever you want to say. Stop riding in the shadow of your parents or your grandparents or whoever it was that brought you up. You know, you have to make it your own, uh, in order to be successful.
Wow. Well said. Well said. Um, yeah, I'm just giving its moment to digest because that was beautifully said. The blueprint of becoming a practical guide to faith, failure, and finding your way forward is a great book. And we didn't even touch on, I feel like we didn't even touch a third. I do highly recommend for those to be able to pick it up, read it. Addiction isn't the only thing. There is grief, which oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about that. That is a powerful story about how your family came through that. This is a great book because what's beautiful about this book is that you share your experience, your growth, and then you tie it into scripture, and then you also give tools, practical tools for anybody to be able to take the time to digest, their own story and their own experience.
Yeah.
So I do want to thank you for being with us today, joining us today, and also to the fact that you took the time to write this. That is an obedience in itself to go through those memories again. Um, Thank you.
That's my pleasure. You know, God has worked in my way, and God has worked in my life in so many ways. You know, you mentioned the hurt. I talk about in the book overcoming the pain of losing my 16-year-old brother to a car accident,
Yeah.
among so many other things. And I have just seen God move time and time again in my life, and in ways that can only be described as a work of God. It can't be described any other way. And so, um, it has been a long road getting this book from the little nudge in my heart in 2019 to now having a book published and out there for the world to read. It has been a long road, but it's not one I would change. And I appreciate you having me on, to be able to share just a little, very small, tiny, but a little bit of my story.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so you can get this book at Amazon. I don't know why. My eyes just want to have water up, but I'm just thinking about what I read because, like, when I read, we were corresponding offline, people, of course, what we do, and then because I know you were asking for like questions, and part of me when I read the book, it was like I had so many thoughts. It was just like I read something and then I sit in it, and then
Hmm.
I pick it up again and I read something else and I just sit in it. And it was just to be able to And what I mean by sit, like there's pain in which you'd be like, oh my gosh, like even though I haven't gone through those things, it's just feeling that you just sit and to be able to digest. And that's also what scripture does for us, you know, and that's what you're supposed to do with scripture, because there's so many things that are multifaceted in everything that God has wanted to be written. And sometimes you just have to sit in it in order to be able to digest and to understand all perspectives of what God is trying to show us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things I'll mention is this book has been such a journey to write, as I said. And as I was, this was not the original intent when I first started publishing this book. Okay. But when I first started reading it, I had a few people read it as beta readers to kind of give me some feedback. And I had more than one person be like, man, this would be a really good group discussion guide.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I kind of just sat on that for a while, and I was like, God was like, yeah, you know, let do that, you know, do it. And so I've actually, if you go out to the website, blueprintofbecoming.com, you can go out there. There's some free resources. There's a quiz that you can take that'll kind of tell you where you are in your becoming steps, as to where you might want to start in the book. After you read my testimony, of course, because that I think helps frame the book. But in addition, there's also a free, I've made available a free leader's guide and a free participants guide that you can download as a bundle, that actually turns this book into a 10-week group discussion guide, group discussion. And it walks you through as a group, because now you're in that community that we talked about earlier. You go through as a group, and start working individually at figuring out your blueprint of becoming and identifying the areas that you probably should change, because that's what God's telling you to do. And I make that available free of charge on the website, to help people take their next step into finding their becoming.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Because you are correct. Now, in the book, there are some steps too, which was really good. I was like, oh, steps. Let me digest this. Let me figure myself out. Like as if I haven't been with myself all these
Yep.
years. But it really be able to put things on paper and be able to move to see yourself in a different way. So thank you, Wesley, for joining me today in this conversation. I'm going to be digesting this conversation even after today, and so I thank you for sharing your story and being with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, viewers, I want to thank you again for watching. Remember, God is love, and God wants us to show His love to the world. Until next time, later.